Something, and I write it in every single book for those that I sign. Always stand in your power and have the courage to speak your truth. I believe that every single one of us has a story to tell. And somewhere along the way, we give our power away. Somewhere we lose our voice. And I want to encourage everyone. You don't have a secret, you have a story.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage.
Do you want something to cry about? Those 6 words, echoed throughout a childhood, can shape a lifetime. They can build walls where windows should be. They can teach you that pain is something to hide, not heal. They can prepare you unknowingly for a career you'll be told again and again that you don't belong. But there's some things that the words can't do. They can't extinguish the fire within. On today's podcast, we're going to be sitting down with a writer who isn't just telling a story, she's igniting change. And today's guest also broke through the barriers that most of us will never face, survived battles, left scars that no one could see, and emerged with stories so powerful that staying silent was no longer an option. Lynnette Fritshaw made history as the first female firefighter in her hometown, dedicating 18 years to protecting her community. But the real fire she had to fight wasn't burning buildings, but in discrimination, misogyny, and harassment became daily obstacles. And this memoir, You're on Your Own, is a raw, unflinching account of resilience, power, and the journey from keeping secrets to sharing stories. So, all the authors listening today, we're in for a treat. Lynnette, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute honor to be here.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, your story definitely resonates with me. I grew up with a family of volunteer firefighters. I wasn't one myself. It was mainly the men, as you could, you've seen yourself and written about in your book. But I know what it's a little bit. Since it's very exciting, but also it can be challenging. I think your memoir kind of hits it right on the spot and does a great job of breaking barriers in a male-dominated field. So we're gonna have a lot of fun to talk about today.
I'm excited.
Yeah, well, let's talk about you to begin with. You mentioned that, just kind of going back to my introduction here, you had a little bit of a hard time in your growing up because your parents' relationship was characterized by conflict. So I'm curious to know how that kind of shaped your viewpoint growing up and how it might have added to your memoir as you began to write it.
I actually didn't start the memoir in my childhood, but once I got into writing it, I realized that I had to. My life didn't start in the fire department, and the themes that I learned in childhood actually carried through my entire life. My parents had a very volatile relationship. It was extremely toxic, abusive, manipulation, which then led and taught me how to be in toxic and abusive relationships.
Right.
Which then I went into a toxic and abusive workspace.
Right. Yeah, so it kind of just flowed from one to the other, kind of like we mentioned earlier. So it's interesting to think how those patterns that, you kind of shape you from the beginning continue to flow on. And I guess that's why some people, well, we can learn from that, right? And you learn to build resilience from those triumphs, which clearly you were able to do throughout all the time you were there. Especially in the 18 years that you dedicated to fire service. I saw actually that people often asked you, I can't imagine the trauma you've endured from the things you've seen and done in your job. So tell us a little bit about that because the trauma can come from your job, but also somewhere else entirely, right? I mean, you talk about the disconnect between what people assume and what you actually experienced. Can you shine a little light on that? Like the trauma between what people assume and what you actually see?
Yeah, absolutely. The job itself had horrific scenes and extremely traumatic calls that I responded to. As a firefighter, we do and see things that are extremely abnormal that most people wouldn't even be able to comprehend. And that is what we do for a job. And it can be very traumatic in the sense of PTSD, CPTSD, psychological injuries, if not dealt with and have healthy coping mechanisms put into place, which is something that I did right from the very beginning, because I knew that the job itself would be traumatic. And I wanted to make sure that I looked after my brain health. But what I didn't take into consideration was the trauma that I would endure and the psychological injuries from my coworkers, my bosses, the people that I was supposed to be able to trust, those that were supposed to be there to protect me. I hadn't even taken into consideration that I could be harmed from that. And so I didn't have any injuries from the job. I say yet, because PTSD has a sneaky way of, catching up with you later. But I had very healthy coping mechanisms in place to ensure that I was able to get through that in a healthy way. But I didn't have anything in place for the other stuff. And that's what hit me really hard.
Right. Well, I guess that there's two avenues I can take with the next question then. I'm curious to know if you are comfortable sharing specific instances of what, led to this sort of trauma, this underlying trauma from your coworkers. Or if perhaps you're not too comfortable with that. I'm also curious to know, what are those safety nets that you said you built to prepare yourself? It sounds like you kind of knew in a way to kind of have those coping mechanisms. So a bit of a dual question there, whichever one you're
Yeah.
more comfortable with, of course.
I'm totally comfortable to answer it.
Okay.
That's part of the story. That is what I needed to do in order to be able to heal, was actually tell the truth about what really went on behind closed doors. The biggest impact, I think, was my very first day on the job. One of the captains took me aside into a private room, and he closed the window and he closed the door. And he said, "You must be really excited, so proud of yourself. You did it. You landed your dream job." He said, "But there's something that you need to know. We've all been in conversation and we're all in agreement that if you get yourself into any kind of trouble, we're not coming to save you. You're on your own."
Okay. So
And
because
that,
woman, is that correct? Over.
yeah. So he basically told me that they would leave me to die if I got into any kind of situation, because I wasn't wanted there. And I pursued it and pushed past all of their trying to not allow me to get hired. And so he wanted me to know that. And
That is
that,
insane.
yeah,
My
yeah,
goodness.
it was
Wow.
betrayal beyond anything that I had ever felt or could even comprehend at the time. It was, I mean, when you're a firefighter, it's a buddy system. You don't do anything alone. It's always two in, two out. You do everything together. Like, you're never on your own. And to be told my very first day that I was going to be on my own, which led to the title of the book, which is the
Yeah.
premise of it all.
Right.
And I didn't tell anybody. Like, I
Yeah,
kept
that's the
that.
next question. Usually you'd want to report that or something, but I'm assuming there's lots of kind of back layers to that, like meanings of why you wouldn't want to say anything or not. Tell us a little about that.
I had promised them that I wouldn't be that girl. I wouldn't
Mm.
be the one that caused trouble, because there had been multiple instances in the news and social media and all kinds of things where women had been hired, and then there was trouble. There was lawsuits. There was women suing the departments and all kinds of things for the things that had been done to them. And so I promised them that I wouldn't be that girl and I wouldn't cause any trouble. They could trust me. I was just there to do my job. And so I kept my word, and I kept secrets to keep others comfortable and protected for most of my career.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry they had to go through all of that. My goodness. But, at the end of the day, you triumphed at the end. And I mean, here you are that you were able to write a memoir and help others who might be experiencing similar situations. So yeah, I mean, and you even said that yourself. I mean, you describe your book as a reminder for anyone who has been underestimated, faced discrimination, or silenced by shame. So based off that, when somebody reads your book, what do you want them to take away from it? I'm guessing it's something along those lines, that hope and resilience. Am I on the right track?
Uh, Absolutely. If it could be a little bit of a guidebook, I said from the beginning, for somebody else's, or a survival guide for somebody else going through the same thing. I've been having so many conversations with people since the book launched that can relate, that have been in similar situations, that, whether it be the staying silent out of shame, or betrayal trauma, or having been in situations of childhood abuse and trauma and things that they've, carried through their whole life. It's relatable on so many levels. But the biggest message is that you can come out the other side stronger. Like, post-traumatic growth is a real thing and it can happen. And I'm living proof. And I know that I was given this task. I say I was
Right.
given this mountain to show others that it can be moved.
Wow. Yeah, and that's clearly just it's powerful. It must have been really hard for you to get this onto the paper, just thinking about the writing process, going through all that again in your mind and reliving it. And it must have taken just tremendous courage. So, um, well, first off, what was that like for you? I mean, on a daily basis, did you have any coping mechanisms that helped you to get it onto the page in the writing process?
I didn't, but I didn't really know what to expect because I had never
Right,
written a
right.
book before. But it was also the very first time that I had said so many of the pieces of my story, because I had
Mm.
kept everything a secret. And one thing that I noticed through the writing process was I would put something out there, and then it would just be like this foreign feeling of not abandonment, but almost like that. And it took me a little while to figure it out. And then I realized that here I am telling my deepest, darkest secrets to a computer. Right? I was
Right.
spilling it all, but I was getting no feedback. So it was like telling your best friend your deepest, darkest secrets, and her just sitting there staring at you with a blank look on her face. And so I was getting no feedback for what I was putting out there. And then once I understood what was actually happening with me, I was like, okay, that I can cope with. But it was therapy times 1,000, honestly, to be able to actually tell the stories for real
That's
for the first time.
Yeah, of course. And that's interesting because I like what you said at the beginning. Like you didn't know what to expect because you've never written before. And I think a lot of authors listening today feel the same way. They might have gone through the same, experiences as you, but then when they sit down to write a book, they're thinking, what am I in for? What am I getting myself into? So
Yeah.
your book not only serves as a guidebook for people who are facing similar situations in their careers, but also, well, they can take a page from your book literally in writing out their own stories as well. So I think that's really powerful, especially for a podcast about authors. So tell us a little bit about that, though. I mean, you balanced both, not only work trauma, but childhood trauma as well. How did you have a plan for weaving these together so effectively?
I didn't have a plan.
No,
Like
just
I
kind
said,
of letting it
I,
kind of flow out then based on you remembered.
I did. I just, the pieces of the story just started to flow, and I just typed and typed and typed and typed. Um, and then when I started to lay things out of, what I wanted, I was like, this can't go here, because I didn't have the stories coming out of me in chronological order.
Mm,
So I had to kind of place them into that afterwards. I just allowed it to come, and I thought, whatever I end up using, I'll use, and some of the stuff I won't. In reality, I probably should have wrote a series, because there is so much stuff that happened that I couldn't fit
never
it
too
all
late.
into one book. But at some point you have to think, okay, it's negative, 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 negative. I need to come out with like the other side in a positive light. And
Right.
the book isn't just about being a firefighter. It's about being a woman. It's about being all of the things that I went through, even becoming a mom. There's so many pieces that all tied together that got me to where I am now.
And of course, yeah. So I guess as a writer myself and as an editor myself, I know what it's like to just let that stream of consciousness and thoughts and feelings get onto the page, and it flows so wonderfully, and it reads great the first time. But then, even you mentioned yourself, you had so much content that overflowed into what could have been another book, or it was all negative, and you just start thinking about what the positives should be. All that seems to be part of your editing process. So I'd love to kind of transition into that a little bit. What was the editing process like? Did you have any help? Was it a matter of you just rereading it and pulling and reattaching content? What was the editing process like for you?
I started out with I'm a very visual person. So I put each chapter on the wall in my
On the
office,
wall. Okay.
and I had them all laid out. And then I just literally started moving them to the spots where I wanted. And then I would put little notes, because I needed to tie the end of this one into the beginning of this one. And then I thought, now that I have this kind of layout and I'm really liking how it's flowing, this one doesn't fit. So I would just kind of remove pieces. And then once I got through all of that, then I actually hired a professional editor to go through it. I wanted to make sure that somebody that wasn't involved in the fire service at all could understand my story. Like I wanted it to make sense to just an average person that wanted to read it, that had no inner workings of anything to do with a first responder. But I also wanted a first responder to be able to read it and know the impact that it was having. So it kind of had to have like these different dynamics, but I didn't want it to be traumatizing to somebody that had never been on a traumatic scene or known anything about what first responders do. So it was kind of a little bit tricky in that sense of making it flow. And she came back with some really good suggestions. I also said to her, this is the very first time that I have ever told this story out loud. So if there are spots where you think that I've kind of cut off and I didn't go deeper, like, or you want to know more, challenge me, because I know there's more in there. I just need to be challenged to get it out. So she came back with some really good spots of this just ended and I need to know more. So then I was able to go in and do that. And then once I had that back, I had 3 friends from completely different walks of life, again, do the proofreading for me.
Okay.
And then each of them came back and said, okay, I need to know more here, or, you know, I love this, or here's some spelling mistakes, or whatever it was that they came back with. And then I did some tweaks and then I'd put it out for the world.
Of course. So I love how you drew from your existing team for your editing process, your friends and people near you in different walks of life, like you mentioned. A lot of authors listening today are probably thinking, do I need to spend money and upon money for this? But you can, but if you're looking for a simple read through or proofread, or to see if the content is well explained enough, if they have any questions, well, read is perfect. Just give it to people near you. Don't let that sort of thing hold you back. You've already got a network, right? Your friends, your
Mm-hmm.
family, neighbors, colleagues. I love that tip. But then again, I guess it also, especially with content such as yours, you got to make sure that's, people that you're willing to share it with, and you have to be ready to share that topic because they could read the book at the end of the day too, whether it's draft or final. Did you, were you a little bit afraid to share it at first, or was it something you'd already come to terms with?
I was anxious for feedback,
Hmm.
but I wasn't afraid. I had finally reached a point where I was like, this is what I'm doing. And I honestly don't care what kind of judgments or opinions anyone might have, because it's my story. And anybody that does have an issue with it, and there are some involved with the department that have an issue with it, but they should tell their story. They can write their own book if they want to tell their side of the story or their version.
Of course. Yeah, so I can see how that's just a very challenging thing to do, but once you're ready for it, well, it's all the more powerful once you begin to write it and share it with others. And at the end of the day, that's what you have to do to make sure that everybody learns from that experience and gets that main message across. But so now that you have the book on the shelves, I guess I'm curious to know, you kind of alluded to it before, the idea that you should have made a series of books. Do you have any other projects in mind for the future? Anything that you've been working on that the listeners today can check out?
I am in the process of recording it right now for
Oh,
Audible.
very cool.
I had so many people say that they could hear me telling the story, like people that knew me. They're like, I could actually hear you when I was reading it,
Right.
but I would love to hear you tell it. And then I have lots of people that said, I don't read books.
No.
I only do audiobooks. And so I've challenged myself, and I wanted to be the one to tell my story. So I'm just over 3/4 of the way through recording for Audible right now. And I'm hoping to have that out by the end of January is my goal. And then I have started another book. It is not like a continuation or a series from this one. It is more of, I don't want to say self-help, but it's along those lines of incorporating pieces of my story still, because I still had things to tell, but in a more relatable, how to get through it, things that I did to navigate it, and hopefully again be, a guidebook for somebody else.
I like that. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that. If If people want to check it out, where's the best place to go to be in touch with you and to stay up to date and get connected? Do you have a certain website that people could head to right after this?
Yeah, my website is firewithincrisisservices.com. I'm always very active on Instagram. So same handle, Fire Within Crisis Services on Instagram. If they want to check out the book, it is available on Amazon or through my website with Amazon as well. And I'm kind of active on Facebook, but not as much as Instagram.
Okay. Well, guys, I'm going to put the links to all those in the description box of this podcast today. So click on over, get in the know, get connected. That's the best way that you can learn more about Lynnette's story and see what she's going to be up to. And of course, the most important thing you do is check out You're On Your Own, which is available. And just a remarkable piece for you to learn a little bit about what it's like to overcome such trauma. And I think everybody can relate to this, whether or not we're in the firefighter profession or if we're in any other scenario in life where we might be feeling a little bit, you know, misrepresented or mistreated. Well, this is a great way to feel aligned to it. Now, Lynnette, I'm curious to know if you have any other thoughts to the audience tonight. What would you like them to take home with them? Something that you've learned that you think that they should implement in their own lives based on your journey.
Something that, and I write it in every single book for those that I sign. Always stand in your power and have the courage to speak your truth.
I love that.
I believe that every single one of us has a story to tell. And somewhere along the way, we give our power away. Somewhere we lose our voice. And I want to encourage everyone. You don't have a secret, you have a story.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. You don't have a secret, you have a story. Don't let anything hold you back, regardless of what you might have to be telling. The only way to help others and to overcome it yourself is to talk about it, right? And that's clearly what you've shared with us today. So I love that so much. So yeah, guys, if Lynette's story resonates with you, if you've ever been told you don't belong, or if you're carrying secrets that deserve to become stories, I mean, your voice matters. Check out what Lynette has to offer. And of course, if you want to write your own book, go for it. Don't be afraid. You're living proof. You've been able to help so many others. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, and do you have any like specific stories of somebody who might have learned from hearing your story?
Oh, I have so
Um,
many. I get messages literally every day from people who can relate, thanking me for speaking up. I've got a lot of men that have actually reached out to me saying that they experienced similar situations in the fire service, being such a toxic culture. They left careers that they loved because they just couldn't handle it anymore. And so they're like, yell it from the rooftop, sister, because it needs to be said. I have had so many people that could just relate on so many levels and have shared their stories with me, and it warms my heart that they are, willing and open to be raw and vulnerable with a complete stranger just because they could relate to some of the words in my book. People will send me quotes from the book and say, I have never had something resonate with me so much. Like, you took the words right out of my mouth that I never knew how to say. So, I mean, it's endless. There's so many. And yeah, my job is complete. If it impacted one person, I said my job was complete, and I've far surpassed that.
That's must be so heartwarming to hear. I think every author's dream is to make an impact like that, especially with a book of this type. So this is just proof that all you have to do is start writing those first words, stick to it, overcome the obstacles, and here you are now with people like that who have learned so much and been able to transform because of your work. So if that's not inspirational enough to get all of you listeners today to write, well, I don't know what will be. There you have it for you.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Like I said, was therapy times 1,000 for me. And so many people have stories that they need to get out, and it would impact so many other people.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it here, everybody. Lynette, thank you for joining us today. I loved your vulnerability and your courage, and of course, thank you for sharing your story. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And again, everyone listening today, thank you for being part of our mission. And until next time, keep writing, keep fighting, and keep finding the fire within. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. Want to turn your expertise into inbound demand? Head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.